Well, joining me live is Dr Terry Goldsworthy, criminology expert. Thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be a big day for people in and around the Bondi area and, of course, for people across the country. We're going to see ramped up security and increased police presence. Let's first talk about the Bondi situation. From a criminology point of view, what are you going to be looking out for certainly today and certainly over the next few days?
Well, in terms of the mass murder that occurred at Bondi, I think the most important thing that we'd be looking for is some indication from the police as to what the motivation of the offender was. I mean, that's going to be crucial in terms of looking at to why the offence occurred, and also going to be assisting in terms of preparation and response for any possible future events. So how the motive pans out will be very important. The police will now be, they've obviously finished the crime scene stage, so they'll now be moving on to, well and truly into the investigation stage. And by that I'm talking about, looking through the CCTV, looking at witness statements, taking those statements, speaking to the family, associates, etc., mental health experts that had contact with the offender, and trying to put together a picture as to why this occurred and what they can do to prevent these matters in future.
And also, we're reporting today a teenager has become the first person arrested and charged for their alleged involvement in a riot that took place in a church, well, outside a Sydney church in Western Sydney on Monday. And the result sparked a stabbing incident from the Christian bishop. It looks like there's going to be more arrests today and also with the riots as well. What are your concerns? We are certainly waiting to hear more information from experts, but what are your issues here?
Yeah, look, these issues of public order, where we have large crowds turning up and turning on the police, seem to be becoming more problematic. I mean, we had one up here in Logan when the YouTuber Spanian turned up to have a look at the suburb, and the crowd gathered. And I mean, like, he was just there to do his YouTube, as he does. And then the crowd turned on the police. And it seems to be that when you get these large crowds together in certain circumstances, they think it's appropriate behaviour that then turn on the police. In the Sydney incident, the police had turned up to assist the bishop. They were there to help. They weren't the cause of the problem. They were there to actually render assistance. And to have them turned on by the crowd, who I see some of the reports suggest many of them weren't linked to the church at all, and I suspect that would be right. They've just obviously on social media or whoever else been contacted and thought they'd go down there to create a bit of mayhem. So, we've seen it in Logan, and we're seeing it now roll out in Sydney. The police form task forces or strike forces down there to pursue these people, and so they should. It should be made very clear to members of the public, you want to go out and engage in this antisocial behaviour and target police merely trying to do their job, then you will be held to account no matter how long it takes. So I think we'll see many more arrests come forward on the basis of the video footage and other evidence available, and rightly so, the police should be pursuing this.
So we're hearing from the Prime Minister, from the New South Wales Minister, from political, religious leaders across the board for the calls for calm. How well do these calls really work?
Look, it is important that we have leaders who lead. When there are these divisions that can develop within sections of society, we need leaders to come out and display a clear understanding of what the situation is and what is required. And that means that you have to get out there and make sure that your messaging is effective. And in some cases, I don't know whether that messaging has been effective. I think Chris Minns is quite good in terms of getting his messaging across as to what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, and what we think our society should be looking like. So I think some of the other leaders in Australia at the moment could take some lessons from Chris Minns as to what good leadership is and how you can get out there and try and influence people's behaviour. But, ultimately you can tell people to behave and not to do things that's inappropriate, etc. There'll always be an element who will disregard that and will just go for looking for the satisfaction of committing their criminal acts. And that's where the police come in and will deal with them and put them before the courts to be dealt with appropriately.
And if we look at different laws across the states, Jack's laws, for example, it passed last month and it allows police to use hand held metal detectors known as wands, I believe. How do you think that's going? And there's talk from other governments across the board that they need to ramp up certain laws. What do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's interesting. We are seeing a lot of focus on knife crime at the moment. Queensland has, as you said, passed Jack's laws, which restricts the sale of controlled items, things like combat knives, hunting knives, etc., to youth. We have the use of metal detectors that has been expanded out, etc., in an attempt to decrease and deter people, particularly young people, from carrying knives. We have seen a increase in knife-related crime in Queensland. I had a look at some ABS data over the weekend when I was writing an article, and in relation to homicides and robberies, etc. We've actually seen knife crime trending down. So, well, unfortunately, the problem is that it may be trending down, but we're seeing it being used in a number of murders in Australia. I think it accounted for about 38% of homicides in Australia. So knives are our preferred weapon in those kind of situations. If you look at the rest of the world, firearms are the most popular means of committing a homicide. But we have strong gun laws in Australia, so therefore people resort to knives. And you can restrict the sale of knives, you can use wanding and whatever else to deter people, but unfortunately, anyone can access a knife by simply walking into a house and going into the kitchen area where there's carving knives, etc. And they can be as deadly as the purpose-built knives like combat knives, hunting knives, etc. So it is a really difficult area to police, and prevention is probably the key in terms of educating young people in particular that the carriage of a knife or a weapon, etc., is highly likely to result in the death of someone if you use it. And whilst you may claim to have it for protection, you'll probably find yourself charged with a very serious criminal matter.
And just quickly, Dr. Terry Goldsworthy, on Monday there's going to be the start of a giant crime blitz on the Gold Coast. What are you in for? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, Whiskey Legion is apparently commencing on the Gold Coast. We have had some raising of crime over the last year or so in Gold Coast property and person crime. So I think it'll be a good implementation of a tactical operation, I guess. Look how long it lasts. I see the last time they ran it in Ipswich and Logan, it was only 10 days. So it's a short term solution. Whether it will have an impact long term, it may not. But nonetheless, I mean, any efforts like this to see police out and about, which I must say I don't see that many on the Gold Coast, it'll be a pleasant change.
Thank you as always, Dr. Terry Goldsworthy.
Thanks, Jane.